Urban renewal begins decades ago, and it is a process by which urban spaces, those that were accused of being blighted, under the notions of redevelopment, these neighborhoods and these communities were really devastated. Literally thousands of people under the auspices of eminent domain or various forms of municipal encouraged or municipal-based expansion were forced to essentially move or find homes elsewhere. In many cases, these folks were not made whole.
My name is Ainity Barnett Lewis, and I live in Harambee, or Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
My name is Jeff Brown. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 23 years old. I was born on Palmer and Wright. I grew up on Palmer and Wright. My family grew on Palmer and Wright, as well as Second and Center.
Believe me, I know the area. I know who moved in, who moved out, what dog got shot, what dog got stole, who got raped, who got OD'd. I know this. So, and then you got positivity too, like with the schools, homes, peers, you can go down to Friday, you know what I'm saying? I know the area. I went to Riverside, so I know my surroundings around here. So I'm just, it ain't what you do, it's how you do it. Mm-hmm. And once you find out a different individual, that's how you expand in certain expectations. You know what I'm saying? I've been around here so long, I can go anywhere down there to Humble, all the way to 77 in the center, and I know everybody.
My neighborhood was predominantly black when I grew up in the neighborhood. All my friends, my neighbors, everybody was black. The houses that we grew up in, though, we owned for a long time. So my great-great-grandfather bought the house in the 60s. He was the first black man on that block. And then my other grandfather, on my dad's side, also bought his house from a doctor in the 60s. So our family grew up, my mom's side and my dad's side of my family grew up predominantly close together, and they were the first black people in the neighborhood that owned houses in that area. And as I grew up, there were more black people there than white people, and so I was used to that all of my life. There was relatively dangerous. You know, it was crime like it's crime anywhere, but it was, you know, the crime in the city from living in what I don't like to call the hood, but, you know, from a predominantly poorer area of Milwaukee.
I mean, it's home, but when I go to other places, people are like, you live in Harambee? And I'm like, yeah, they're like, that's hood, right? And I guess in some ways I think of it like that too, but I feel safest when I'm over here versus like walking around Riverwest by myself. I'm like, I'd much rather be over here doing it, even though it's scary. Yeah, it can be a dangerous neighborhood. Like if I think for a second, I can point out, like within eye distance, like places where I've known people that have been killed within like the last couple of years. But for some reason, that's not as scary to me as like rape shit that happens in Riverwest. The stuff that happens in Riverwest is totally random. But the stuff that happens here, I feel like escalated from something. It didn't just like appear. Versus like there, it's like your car's gonna get stolen, or you're walking home and someone is gonna attack you in a park or some random shit. It's like for no reason. It's just here. It's like, oh, you messed with the wrong person, or you were rude, or you overstepped. Like it doesn't come from nowhere.
In my opinion, it was a pretty strong community. My immediate neighbors all lived there as long as my grandparents lived there, so I grew up knowing my exact neighbors, my surrounding neighbors, by name, their families, their moms, their kids. Me being the youngest generation that lived in the area, I was always around my elders, and my elders always, you know, talked to the neighbors around me. So it was a general community of people that looked after each other. But it was only extensive as I guess the block or two that I lived on. The surrounding area was just like, in my opinion, any other impoverished neighborhood. You had crime, you had people selling drugs, you know, you didn't want to walk down the street as freely as you wanted to. But we all just kind of made do.
Because from the outside, I'll like look like longingly back at Harambee when I'm like in Riverwest. Like once I get over there, I'll be safe, like I'll be home. But then people from the outside are like, that place just had 2 people murdered, like 4 blocks from your house. And I'm like, but that's where I live. I didn't get it at first. Like when I was first started UWM, like some of my classmates, they'd be like, oh, I don't want to go to Riverwest, like it's really dangerous. And like I would look at them and I feel kind of sad. Like if that's how you see Riverwest, like you probably will never have fun in New York or Chicago or LA, like or Atlanta. Like if Milwaukee is too scary for you, like that'd be really bad. So I just kind of looked at them like with almost like a sense of pity. Like I was like, oh, I feel bad. Like you'll never have like a chance to explore.
What about Harambee?
Oh, that's totally different.
That's where I live.
It's ghetto fabulous. Because all they want to do is fight, steal, and get high. You know what I'm saying? I mean, with their own family. It's not the other people out on the street. They rob from their mamas, their aunties. They're taking ham, the cheese. They don't get to the store, man. You understand me?
But you can just see these homes over here. Like these people, they do care about their area, they do care about their neighborhood. It's just this idea is placed upon them that they're all like drug dealers that don't care about their space. Even the guy who was talking to us, he was like, they're all drug dealers or gang people, and I'm like, it's not like that for everybody, but those perceptions are just there because it's an inner city or because of their race.
The displacement fractures community. You know, you have, for example, highways driven or built through communities that then changes the structural makeup of the community, but also changes the natural progression of community development, community growth, community engagement in these local micro communities. You know. And it also plays, I think, and I don't know that I've actually seen this kind of research to confirm it, but there has to be a psychic component to growing up in an environment where the first thing you see when you walk outside every day is a highway. Or, you know, you walk outside and you're not necessarily walk outside, you're adjusting to a new community. And then over the next 5 to 10 years, you see the neighborhood that you used to live in, all of a sudden looking different with different people there. And in some ways, you're not even welcome.
This the business, how you perceive it, like, and how you doing. See, she ain't got on no shoes, but she got some, so it's okay. But it's okay, but that's how you deal with life.
Now, you know what? Help the homeless. I'm a homeless woman, still on the bridge, a homeless center. God will help me.
Yeah, but I'm saying I've been here so long.
In Jesus' name.
But I'm here to help.
I have Caucasian
me,
children.
But my
West
youth.
Virginia.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm trying to find them.
Wow, what you doing here?
I need bus
And
fare.
school open today? You know what I'm saying? It's how you put
In the
it
name
out
of
there.
Jesus. My
Yeah, say
grandkids is whiter than
you
you.
need them gym shoes.
And my
Show me
daughter
an
is Russian.
So if you show me that A, you got them gym shoes.
White in the snow.
I know what a warehouse is. No, to talk to you.
I'm out here struggling.
But if
I
you show
got
me
on
something,
shoes.
I can do something for you.
Look at my hair. And I can put some state.
This how
God, please bless me.
Find it.
In the name of Jesus, please bless me.
So if you
Help the homeless.
you learn something.
Help the homeless.
And what knowledge,
In Jesus'
what
name.
good is knowledge education have?
The poverty indices in our city are of human rights concerns. They are gripping. And I think it's really interesting that we're having this conversation today, considering what just happened over the last 24 to 36 hours in Baltimore, Maryland. When people are marginalized outside of the economic mainstreams, when they then also aren't able to exact or enact a kind of control over their communities and their daily experiences, or if they just simply feel like occupied individuals in their own communities. And then they also are not invested in the residential stock in their community if they're not homeowners. You add to that mix police violence, unemployment, the brutality of the war on drugs, and let's add more to it, drug trafficking, as one of the only, we just had Dave Simon here, shouts to The Wire, one of the only true industries in some of these urban spaces, drug addiction. What are people going to do, you know? I once heard a quote that I think went something like this, I think the quote is, hope is inversely proportional to rage. That as your hope diminishes, your rage is necessarily going to increase. And there are many commenters who are going to say, what happened in Baltimore, and then you hear it all the time, why are they tearing up their communities? Well, let's ask a question about how many of these folks actually own stock in that community. Why are they doing that? Well, you know, when's the last time you've been surveillanced and experienced the militarized nature of a police force, and you know, and then the fundamental question is, are they destroying what's theirs, or are they destroying the visible presence of that marginalization? You know, and I'm not excusing anybody. I'm not going to go out and riot and tear anything up, but I damn sure understand.
I'm not super close with a lot of my neighbors. Like, we mostly just like nod at each other. We have like recognition, but that blue house that burned down in late July of 2014 was like one of the neighbors that I had like a relationship with. His name was Otis, and he lived with like his grandma. And he was like a church guy, and he drove a school bus. And he was really cool. Like every time I'd coming home from school, he like stopped me and asked me about my sister. Like he had like an old spirit, even though he's probably like early 30s. And so like now that his house burned down, I don't have him anymore. So I'm like walking past. I'm like, oh, where's Otis? So I can tell him about this project I'm doing. Or be like, Diamond's in town. Be like, come say hi to Diamond, whatever. So it's sad. And it's been up for like, right now it's April and it's still up, 2015. Houses like get like burned or be burnt, and then like they're torn down within like a week or two. So this one makes no sense to me, because those houses that I've seen torn down after being burned seem salvageable. This one, I'm like, I don't see any way that this could be salvageable, and it's been up for the longest I've ever seen. And supposing this were like Sherwood, I feel like it had been taken care of like instant.
Street up here, it's just like because you're so close to the highway, people like they would go like 50 miles an hour just down the street, like zooming all times of the day. Like you can wake up, it wakes you up, but I don't even wake up to it anymore. It's like, at first I would, but I don't know, you grow immune to it. So, this right here, they just put this in this summer, this speed bump, because you see my fence right there, like, one day we came home and there were just like 2 cars laying in our front lawn, like I have pictures from it still, because they were just there, and then this pole right here was knocked down for a good 3 weeks before the city came and repaired it, and then like that, and then it happened again, like cars would just run into our front lawn because it's on this corner house. So then they finally put this up after like 10 years of residents complaining, but even though like my fence got torn down, the first time it happened was 2014, and then like it happened like 3 times so far. And then they put this up. But this speed bump, you know how speed bumps are usually higher up off the ground? The speed bump has caused more accidents than it has prevented because it's so low. And for the first like 2 months it was up, none of these reflector signs were on. My mom had to call him. She was like, there's been more accidents. Can you put some reflector signs up? And the guy was like, all right, I'll see about it. So what they did was put like those orange barrel tubes on there. And then that didn't do anything. So then finally, like 2 months after she asked, they finally put these up, but cars will still run into these. Like if you walk closer, you can still see tire marks. All these old leaves. But anyway, and look at this.
Holy crap! Landscape, cobblestone, trees, strawberry growing.
And that's just 4 blocks down. And then there's another one right there.
Yeah, you see multiple views this size in this area.
So this is all over the neighborhood in a sense, which when a tree's decorated like that, it indicates that someone had been murdered right there. And that guy was probably like 20. I don't remember his name, but he's from this must have been like, he must have lived up here because this tree was always decorated. Yeah, it looks like he had a daughter too.
There's families that live in this space, but there's no playground, there's no nothing. So when there's kids playing, they're always playing outside in the street. And it's like, what developer even does something like that when you know that this place is going to be for families? Like, you'd have a space where the kids could play, like a green space, but there's none of that. So like, there's kids always playing out in the street and stuff. And this is a main street, like the 22 runs down this.
Buffalo County right here, this right here used to be a grocery store. Right here, before it turned to a grocery store, it used to be a grocery store. That was in 87. They closed it in 90. That store right there used to be the corner store. That was the neighborhood where they cut lunch meat and bologna. They had that little spreader. Instead of you buying it in the pack, you know, they cut lunch meat and cheese.
Oh.
Right there, yeah, that was right there was our neighborhood bakery, and they would do it. This was the bank right here, yes sir. That always have been a liquor store. That right there used to be a bike store. You got two bike stores down this way. Excuse me, I'm just pointing this way. I'm just letting you know. Local store used to be over there before they found out that they can't give people money for Quest cards. This right here is Wilson's. That used to be the neighborhood grocery store too. The store right here. Now they have Arabs work there. It used to be dominated black that worked there, but now you don't have no blacks working there.
The impact of urban renewal is that it also drains or changes what could have been a healthier economic growth or some sort of economic stability in communities. And a lot of the communities across the country that were ravaged by urban renewal, you had business owners, you had folks who owned a whole range of businesses, and you had a whole range of economic threads that were running through these communities that had nurtured over a generation or two, depending on how we think about the arrival of southern migrants and the expansions of the populations and black people in those neighborhoods. But then what happens to the business owner when he or she is forced to relocate their business somewhere else, if they're even able to? You know, Milwaukee has some of the most remarkable housing stock of any city I've ever visited. You know, these homes are sturdy. You know, when as real estate agents like to say, the house has good bones. You know, the structural makeup of these communities, of the built environment, lends itself to gentrification. You know, I know that sounds somewhat defeatist, but we're near a university. Right, Harambee is near a university, and at the same time, it's near downtown. You know, it expands in this interesting way. It's off of the highway, which is still a benefit because of access, right? And it's very much nearby and connected to trendy cultural arts kinds of things. That's a recipe for gentrification. If you want to lay out the pathway to gentrification, put very important educational, artistic, or arts-based and other culturally based institutions in and around an area and make it very accessible. And it's just a recipe for gentrification. And that doesn't mean that gentrification is only going to happen at the hands of white newcomers. You know, minorities can be a part of that process too, especially for an emerging middle class or even in any version of a middle class. You know, gentrification doesn't doesn't own, it's race and class in that process. And so in terms of urban renewal in Harambee, what I think actually allowed for that community to become what it became, thrive, and still kind of hang on to some of the important outcomes is that these folks were directly involved in making sure that their communities were redeveloped on their
outsiders into the community. Easy question enough. It's close to downtown, it's close to the lake. The metro area is expanding. There are a lot of people that are putting more money into the downtown area, and because of that, you have more people putting their money into the surrounding areas of the downtown area. Downtown, East Side, UWM campus, all of these areas have been generating a lot of money for a long period of time, and the people that lived in the border lines of these areas are now getting moved and put in different areas so that these people can redevelop this land, the homes, and make it a community that they see fit for it to be. And unfortunately for us, we aren't in those pictures. So when homes are getting demolished and condos are going up, the people that lived in those homes can't afford to live in those condos. But the people that can afford to live in those condos will make sure that they will do that, as well as start buying more property to do the same thing that the people have done before them.
Connotatively, gentrification is bad because people are taking over spaces that don't belong to them. But denotatively, like how I would think of it is like there's more money coming through an area, which is cool. But at the same time, I think the scary thing is that it threatens to push out all the people who have made it home already. So seeing gentrification in my neighborhood is, I don't really see it in my neighborhood because in this area specifically of Harambee that I live in, I feel like we all have very similar economic backgrounds. We're all the same class, so there's not as much of that. Versus where you live, Milan, I could totally see like encroachment because you live right by Brewers Hill and know that architecture is amazing.
Close to downtown, that's what's really getting a lot of people from the suburbs wanting to buy in this area because it's close to where they work, it's close to festivities, it's close to the arena, all of that.
Past 10 to 15 years, a lot of the people that grew up in the neighborhood are not there anymore. Either the houses got foreclosed or whatever happened to get them to go from where they were all of their lives to a different area. And so now our neighbors that I grew up with, my neighbors that I grew up with are disappearing. Their houses are disappearing. There's more empty lots in the area that I was from than I've ever seen as I was growing up. I've had houses that our family owned that are now not there anymore. So there's a lot more blight in the area now. But on the other side, there's also a lot more people coming into the community and are taking over those lots, those homes, making them look better, fixing them up, reselling them, or moving in. So my neighbors are a lot more mixed than they used to be when I was, a kid. It's complete gentrification. And it's the way it is. When I was growing up, there's a lot of African American people that lived in that part of the east side of Milwaukee, and everybody else lived in the boondocks. They lived far out, the outskirts, the suburbs, the mid suburbs, the borderline areas between going way out to middle nowhere and kind of being in the inner city. And now the cycle of gentrification is moving from going out to reorganizing the urban setting in the metro area. I don't think it's a coincidence that people can live in a house for 60 plus years, no problem, and then, within 5 years, automatically just, aren't supposed to be there anymore. And then the people that do come in the area, their motives are a lot different, which, some might say is good and some might say that it's bad. But all in all, it's change, and the change that's happening is only benefiting the people that are moving down there and the people that have been there for the longest time and is used to their community being how it is are now getting uprooted and moved out to other parts of Milwaukee that they didn't plan on living at when they were when they bought this house, the houses that they lived in.
Asked if we could possibly buy Ministry House and restore it. It was a condemned drug house. And so it took 2 years to restore, and we have families living in it now and in the house in the back, and we now own 5 houses in Harambee. So what do I have to say about gentrification? I think it's going to be wonderful for Milwaukee and the people, but my concern and why I dove into this was because we found gentrification was actually purification. So it meant that all of our families who lived here already and the people who wanted to stay in this area couldn't, because they couldn't afford it. And as we regentrify, what we find is quite often the city will then find the properties that had issues. Like Sonia's next door and she needs her siding fixed and her porch rebuilt. And Andrew, her grandson's living there and he's wonderful. Hi, Andrew! But the most common thing to do is to find her and cite her and tell her she has to do the repairs that she can't afford. And then we find so many of the families then end up just being evicted from their property and they go into foreclosure. And then, sad to say, a neat white family can afford it and buys it. So it's a little awkward for me because I'm a white lady in a community that I want a really wonderful, diverse race. I just love our wonderful diversity here in our eclectic world. We're kind of similar to Riverwest, but we have our own vibe. And so I'm restoring the houses, but I'm restoring them with the families that want to live there, and then they become their houses too, so that they can be part of the community. We do it as almost a co-op type program where they buy in, and then I'm able to give them a lesser rent, and in that then they're able to stay in the community. And so we've purchased 5 so far. So we have these 2 here, and the White House across the street is the newest. I'll be out there in an hour. We'll be painting the inside of it. We have a handicapped family that will be moving in there with rent and caring for them. We have one on Reineke and one on Buffalo. So, and the newest addition, besides all of this, I work at the church and I work with the kids in the garden, is our orchard. And I'm almost in tears because 2 days ago, on Friday, we planted 6 pears and 6 apple trees. And with that planting, we already have 2 donations of picnic tables and benches. And we want this to be a community area where people can sit and enjoy the fruits of our labors and the kids can play. Maria in the back has 9 grandchildren, and I see them running through the fields and just playing in this area. So that's my feeling. That's what's going on. That's what we're about. So, and All Peoples is just very integral. We want to make sure that we don't just cleanse the neighborhood and purify it and make it, into one race and one type of person, because the diversity of Harambee is just amazing. So.
As a person that graduated from architecture, and now that I'm working in my field, I meet developers, or I catch ear of developers that are working on, changing the area. The theme of the Riverwest movement expanding further west is becoming more and more true, by the day. And yeah.
Do you want to talk about that some more?
Well, I guess it's gonna happen. I don't think there's a lot of people in the city that knows about it. So, for example, you can have these developers and architects and urban planners that are working on redeveloping the certain part of Milwaukee. Primarily right now, it seems like the focal point is all the surrounding areas around the east side and the downtown area. And the general public, the people that go to work every day, kids go to school in the community, they don't catch ear of it, so they have no say-so on the matter. And when they do, it's brung to them in a public hearing that's laced with a bunch of text that they don't understand, or a bunch of codes and whatever was set up in that aspect of the system to get this moving that they just can't understand as a general population of people. So they have no say-so in the matter, and their area is changing right before their eyes. People that live next to people for 30, 40 years are now living next to people that they've never seen before, or the houses are boarded up and they're just rotten, they're falling, It's looking as areas of that were regular, I guess, if that's a good word for it. But the average home in the east side turned into homes of blight really quickly as they decided to move people outside of their homes and not do anything with the properties of value, and then take those homes when they're at the most minimal value and fixing them, and then making the property value goes higher up so that more people who have the money and the means of getting down there can take over those places. And it's gonna happen, it happens all the time. And it's just, after a while, you peep the patterns and you start to notice it.
As far as numbers, Milwaukee isn't the largest threat of gentrification worldwide by any means.
Go ahead, Milan.
Oh, what I was just gonna say is that you're right. Like, gentrification isn't one of the biggest. Like, it's not in Milwaukee. It's not the worst nationwide, but you have to take into consideration other factors. Like, Milwaukee's worse than segregation. It's like one of the second most impoverished major cities. It's one of the Wisconsin has the highest disparity of black male incarceration. It's the 4th worst black female unemployment rate, the 5th worst black male employment rate. So all these factors build up to make it this hyper-segregated place that it is. And all these disparities, when you're just jam-packed with disparities after disparity after disparity, like, maybe segregation's worse just in San Francisco, but San Francisco doesn't have all these other disparities that make Milwaukee this worst place that it is. And when we just continually face all these forms of oppression, it's like, what now? What do we have? All we have is just these constant lacks.
Now that we get more and more people wanting to move back to central cities, gentrification will become more of a problem. So it may not be the core issue in terms of people's lived experiences in Milwaukee yet, but it's coming. I mean, all we have to do is look around and see all the different townhomes and condos that are going up, or the former factories that are being converted to all types of forms of use, either commercial or residential. And that's going to price out not only the poor and working class people in these communities, but also middle class folks can be priced out as well. Harambee is a community where we saw the beginnings of urban renewal starting to have some pretty negative effects, and then the citizens of that community said, well, slow down. If we're talking about redevelopment and renewal and all that kind of stuff, we need to be a part of that process. Not only do we need to be a part of the decision-making process, which they were still, in many respects, kept out of the major decisions made, but they certainly pushed back and demanded that as community organizations and community leaders, that they have a say in what happened to their community. And there were some partnerships that developed with UWM back in the 1970s that spoke to that. The other important component about that particular moment was that you saw the beginnings of people really beginning to engage in the local political process in very meaningful ways. And a lot of that local leadership emerges around and out of efforts to have black people involved in the process of urban renewal and redevelopment.
To build a stronger community, the people in the community have to be more active. They have to start taking pride in the community as far as, owning their homes, their property, their community, knowing who their neighbors are again, speaking to them, not being afraid to sit on their porch and talk to other people. Take pride in their streets, cleaning up some stuff, making houses look better. And if it's not, then figure out ways in order to make that happen without just letting it fall to the hands of, people that don't care about the people in the community. So, you have to start just doing more. Like, one of the cool things that I like to see is people turning blight and empty lots into something that's positive, like, art and community gardens. Things of that nature gives personal value to the people in the community, and we need to do more of that.
There's a lot of families in this, like, my immediate vicinity who care about their properties and like stuff, and that definitely has a ripple effect. Like in the winter, if I see someone, like if I see that my neighbor's shovels, I have to go shovel now too. Like I can't be the only house with like snow in front of it stuff after like it snowed like 4 hours ago. Oh yeah, I noticed you take pride in painting your porch. I'm gonna paint my porch, or I don't know. I mean, none of these homes are like pristine, but I feel like they all have like so much character and like love put into like what they do have. Like just because I've observed it, that's maybe why I know that.
It gives people the opportunity to not have any roots, to not be able to claim anything as their home and stand by it. So you have a lot of people that grow up, they go from home to home or neighborhood to neighborhood, and they just do what they do to get by. And with that being said, there's no pride in the city anymore. There's nobody that walks by and pick up trash, and that just leads to people treating their homes and their areas like dirt, which means they're gonna start treating each other like dirt, and they won't have any value in themselves. They don't see any value of where they are as a people and where they come from, even if it's been in an area, for a long time, and owning it like it's your area, And so because of that, people move around all the time. They'll have no anchor to anything positive, and so people find the avenue and using that against them by, taking what they do, whether it's, selling drugs on the block or, not doing anything positive around their area, but just walking around these certain streets and doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. They don't have any strong avenue, no anchor to keep them tied to the area and take pride in it and their people. As long as they keep allowing us to not be settled in a certain area and they keep us jumping from area to area, we will never have any value in ourselves, in our community, in our neighborhood, which is going to always lead to us not valuing ourselves or our people, which leads us to us being in jail, not valuing our education, not caring about what we do every day just because we don't care about what's going to happen next, besides making us survive from neighborhood to neighborhood.
One of the most untold stories that is this egregious example of the era of urban renewal, that was that in a lot of cities across the country, urban renewal projects, the building of municipal infrastructures, the building of highways, black workers were kept out of those jobs. So here we have an argument made about redeveloping and renewal and all this stuff because of these blighted areas, and yet the very people in those communities were denied, racially denied on account of their race, access to the construction jobs that were supposedly redeveloping their neighborhoods. And so what we saw here in Harambee was a community. We saw here in Harambee a community of folks who said, no, we're going to take part in this process, and we're going to become connected to the political and economic decision makers in a way that allows us, gives us, or in a way that demands that we become agents in this process. And there were some really positive outcomes to that, both in terms of changes in the community, the sense of a cultural identity that is anchored just in the name Harambee itself.
Spaces like just to gather, I don't think so, which is weird. Like off the top of my head, like walking distance from my niece and nephew, my nephew just turned 10, and my niece is 8. Like if I want to say go to a park, like there's nothing like super close. So that's like the closest one off the top of my head. Oh, there's a school, but that's like kind of like a private park. But yeah, there's not many safe spaces or like community spaces. So yeah, it's really neat that we have that.
Interesting.
There's a beautiful garden called Concordia Gardens, and it's a community space for healthy food and people educating themselves on nutrition and agriculture, which is really neat. The space serves as like a gathering place for like the youth in our area who are curious about anything, because kids are always curious about everything, and they get taught by like really interesting farmer types how to grow their own food, and through that process, like even though they may not have eaten it before, they'll eat it because they grew it. Like that carrot is all of a sudden really beautiful and precious when you put in all that time to like grow it. So yeah, it's about education. I think that's the main thing. And then it's about food. The second main thing is about like safe spaces for people to gather. Fun things for communities to do together. It's a really neat place.
This is pretty nice. Someone who lives in one of these houses maintains and owns this garden. And the nice thing about it too, even though it's like really effective, like people will reclaim this land and they'll use it as their own spaces. Like right here, they took over this and use it. A lot of them buy these lots and then they use them as their own. So like now they have like a larger space and they rebuilt this garage over here too. So that's pretty nice.
Some of my goals for the neighborhood, because I am a person that was born and raised in the neighborhood and have parents and grandparents that were born and raised in the neighborhood, my plan is to stay there. My plan is to try to get involved as much as I can as far as the home and real estate and construction and development aspect, so that we have really nice condos going up downtown. That's great. The metro area, there's a lot of money going into that. The property taxes are going to go up. The houses are going to be fixed. That's all good, but I think that we have to find and take our piece, of that, and stay where we're going to stay at, and not just let them take it from us, but not be afraid of change, and not being afraid to work with these people, and to work with our own people, in order to make, in order to coexist as the best way that we can, and it shouldn't be an issue of survival anymore, because it wasn't in the beginning. But now it's getting to that point where people are just trying to survive and their homes are getting taken from them and they're going somewhere else and they're trying to survive somewhere else. And so because of that, and I see these patterns, and I see that these people who are coming into the community are putting a lot of money into making stuff better for them, but are letting the things that we have always been around go on the decline. And we need to stop letting this happen. We have to take value in what we feel is valuable, and stop letting other people put value on our homes and our families and our neighborhoods. And with that being said, I plan on being around to help combat the disvaluement of our neighborhood, and to try to re-enrich the neighborhood and make it more valuable in our own eyes to our own people, and invest in our own people.
For those folks who've lived through it, it still stings. It still stings for folks who essentially lost their home, their community, and now have to sit around and watch and look at a Starbucks and a park and and they clearly aren't welcome in some of these areas.